I kind of want to start with the smoke. Microsoft has what we like to call done in the past, and Crispy will agree with me on this. Stepping on rakes. It's something that they know how to do very well. And obviously, one of the things that you've noticed, well, again, especially if you've been following me here on Double Barrel Gaming, is bad news usually drops on a Friday, right? So we have the weekend to let it simmer. Some people do podcasts over the weekend, so you get a chance to hear about it. I literally almost did another Saturday show, but Mrs. Boom and I were so busy. And so I didn't have the time, and I didn't want to just half cock it. So I was, you know what, I'll save that topic for Monday. And well, here we are, folks. So in what I believe to be another rake stepping moment for Xbox, they raised the prices of the Xbox Series X and S once again. Now, when I say once again, they just did this a couple of months ago. So this is now the second increase. And I got to tell you, Crispy, I'm going to be 55 on Thursday. So I'm definitely the old man in the room. And I've been around since 78. I've told you the story 100 times before. In all of the years of gaming, I don't and can't recall a time where after a console was officially released and had a few years on the market, that said console's price was raised. I've never seen anything quite like it. And when you just take a step back, now granted, yes, we're going to give Xbox and more specifically Microsoft some smoke, and I think it's well-deserved criticism, right? But let's make no mistake, they're not the only ones to have done this. Nintendo raised the price of the Switch 1, which is ridiculous. The Switch 2, folks, I'm here to tell you, that price increase is going to drop, and it's probably going to drop right before the holidays, which would really suck, to be honest with you. Sony has already raised the price once, and like many things before them, they're going to see what Xbox is doing, and there might be another price increase. And it's not because they're trying to just copy them and they want to make more money, but ultimately that's what it comes down to. Crispy, this is a wild conversation to have. The price increases on the entry into Xbox gaming is $399 for the S model, which is wild. Like, this console launched at $299, and it is now $100 higher 5 years later. If you go and let's say, for instance, you want to go and get the 2 terabyte Xbox, I have that, right? I think it came out at $649 if I remember correctly. It might have been $599. If anybody in the chat wants to correct me, I'd appreciate it. But I don't know if it was $599 or $649. But that joint is $800. I mean, look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know. I mean, they said it's macroeconomics, and we know every time you hear that, I just want to punch somebody in the face. Because listen, we're not business types, folks. We're video game players, so I don't want to talk about macroeconomics. I don't really give a shit. But this is so real quick. Whole Grain Bread says they've increased the S by 33% since launch. Great point of view, brother. I mean, that's just crazy. That's just crazy. Crispy, let's try and make sense of this, because they weren't selling, or they were having trouble selling consoles before the price increases, and that was 2 of them now. How do they expect to sell consoles now? I don't know. Let's get your thoughts on this.
Oh, I think we live in bizarro world at this point. I have, like, literally my Series X is now an investment.
Yeah.
Like, think about that.
Yep.
I think I paid $620 and I got I got Watchdog Legion with it, which I never even opened, by the way. I have a sealed copy if anybody's interested. And I got 2 controllers, with the controller came with an extra controller. Yeah, and I think it was about $620. And that was at a point in time where they were actually kind of sold out, and my buddy kind of hooked me up because he knew somebody at PC Richard and Sons, and they let him know like immediately when it was back in stock. But they also had this little asterisk that you had to buy a bundle with a bunch of other stuff like the controller and etc. So if you really think about that right now, I got all that extra stuff and it's still cheaper than it is now. It's kind of crazy. And it's a little wild. It's almost like, like all these collectible type things. And now we're getting into newer consoles being like a collectible type thing that gains value just because these companies are just like, okay, we're going to say macroeconomics or tariffs, and we're going to raise the price. I mean, let's be honest here. You could say that all you want, but we're talking about billion and trillion dollar companies. Maybe we could give a little bit of a pass to Nintendo in a way because they're not even close to, Sony or Xbox, but it's Microsoft here, people. Like, I have nothing. This is ridiculous. It makes me very mad at myself not buying the Series S much sooner. And I'm probably going to just hold back on that at this point. Or I'm going to actually throw my Scorpio edition on eBay and maybe get some money or something. Because, I mean, they're out there, but, you don't see a lot of them. I've looked. So, and it's in perfect condition. Like I've used it, but I've taken great care of it. So it's one of those conundrums now because like could really use a Series S in the bedroom, but also I don't want to spend more than I think is logical. And we're at that point now. As far as this is where we start talking about, okay, why are they doing this? Well, it doesn't help that Sony ain't got no games coming out. I'm going to tell you that right now. You got Yotai and you got, some handheld, type. They're holding hands with certain companies and they're getting, year exclusivity, or ends up being longer sometimes, but we'll just say a year. And that's how they're pushing their consoles right now. Well, Xbox is like, oh, we got Game Pass. That's a seller.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have all these games coming out on top of it. And you could play them in Game Pass as well. So I don't know if they're being a little extra, puffing their chest out like, oh, we can charge more now, which obviously I'm not for. I would be a person that says, if you got a PlayStation, stick with it. If you got one Xbox and you really wanted to, I wouldn't do it right now. The only thing we could do is not buy them at this point, and just maybe you start seeing some sales. But right now, we're getting closer to the holiday already, and you're raising the price right there. Now, what's going to happen? Now we're going to go back to the price that was already raised, not even the one that was before that as a sale. Like it's crazy. Ridiculous. I mean, I'm with you, Boom. I have never seen this. And we are talking about even other electronics that this is still not really happening. You know what I'm saying? So it makes me question how much, these companies might be, tapping
Greedy,
each other on the shoulder. Well, no, even tapping each other on the shoulder and be like, okay, Microsoft, you could take it. You go first. And then we're going to see, Nintendo or Sony go second. And then they're just going to keep flip-flopping back and forth and keep raising the prices. And this is where we're talking about a handheld coming out that now is looking like it's going to be more than the rumor. I'm saying? And it's like, at least that thing can play some PC stuff, and it has this new, UI, and you still have Game Pass and all that. But still, is it going to be more than the 2 terabyte Series X? More than likely now for that LIX. So now we're just in Bizarro world. It's like, Superman became Bizarro, and we never understood that transition until you went through the whole story. You know what I mean? And we're at that whole story point. We need a documentary at the end of this of how, after all of this time in gaming, we have gotten to this point where everything is going up in price, even if it's 5 years older. Electronics are not supposed to do that. This is not normal. And I hope this is not a trend for the future, because if this continues, gaming is gonna, at least console gaming is going to be dead on arrival in another 10 years. And we're going to be talking about the death of console gaming in general. So we'll see what happens, but I definitely, I would definitely hold back right now and see what's going on, unless you're like some people are probably thinking, is it going to go up more, which is a quite possibility. So we're at the point where you're playing stocks at this point, or you're gambling. So do you wait and see if it goes lower, or do you buy it now and anticipate it going higher again? That is crazy that we have to think about this at this point. They should always be lower after 5 years. This is absurd. And like I said, I don't see many other electronics doing that tenfold, unless it involves gaming or computers or anything like that. You sometimes see them go higher. Now, also, I would like to point out that when it comes to these newer consoles that are coming out, I hope they can figure out these scalpers, because they're going to jack the price up even more. They got to figure out a way to limit these bots. I know there's a lot of companies working on it. I haven't heard anything from Xbox in general, so we'll see about that. But that's another problem that exists, even more prevalent now. So we're just at a really strange time in gaming. And I mean, you got to say enough, like, the console goes up, but hey, I already got one and I got Game Pass, so it doesn't really affect me. But it's still it's disheartening, because they're having a year, they're going to have a great year next year, and really they're going to be hurting themselves from selling more consoles by raising these prices. And it also brings you into question that you're trying to sell more subs, so how does that help you? There's a lot of questions here, and I want to see the outcome. We're going to hear stuff along the time, and as we get into seeing more of their reasoning, because I'm sure somebody's going to figure out something at some point, or have somebody leak something, that we're going to be able to discuss this more. But right now, it's just absurd.
Yeah, great points all around. Fuzzy, I have some numbers. And you know how I feel about evidence-based conversation, right? Like, we can have opinions. Very hard to argue the numbers. So I want to show a succession. Hey, hold on just a second. So the Series S, when it was raised in May, right? Now check this out, folks. This is the crazy succession. In the US, the Series S 512 gigabyte was originally $299.99. So let's just say $300. Xbox on May 1st, 2025, which was only a couple of months ago by my math, raised it by 27% to $380, right? The Series S 1 terabyte was raised to $430. The digital Series X was raised to $550. The Series X itself was raised by that was raised to $600. And get this, folks, the Series X 2 terabyte Galaxy Black Special Edition, which I have, was raised by 22%. Check this out, folks. From $599.99 to $730. Fast forward to Friday, and what you have now is the Series S 512, $400, the cheapest entry point into Xbox. And I know you can play anywhere, but if we're talking console sales, it's $400. $450 for the 1 terabyte. $600 for the digital X, $650 for the regular Series X with a disk drive, and the most redonkulous thing I've seen in practically the last 5 years, maybe even a decade, Fuzzy Belvedere, is the Series X 2 terabyte Galaxy Black Special Edition. is now $800. That is $200 higher than its original launch price. I mean, what is going on? So again, and there is a back end conversation that we're going to have here, right? We're talking about the price increases and how this is a really bad look. And I know there's going to be some people that are going to push back and be like, well, no, but others. We're talking this is an Xbox podcast, folks. This is one of those situations where I feel it necessary to give smoke to Microsoft, because I give smoke to Nintendo, even though that's shocker, I do, and PlayStation. And this is a bad look, man. I get prices are going up, but and this is where I don't want to say greedy corporation, but I kind of wonder if the consoles aren't selling and they're currently sitting somewhere, they're already paid for. They're already made and paid for. They've spent the money. They're waiting for people to buy these things at the original price from the May 1st increase. And if they're sitting somewhere, what is the point of selling it for the higher price now? Are they, because didn't we hear that they were kind of scaling back production?
Yeah.
So if they were scaling back production, what's the deal with this?
It's really unusual. I'm a watcher of pricing on a lot of electronics. Like, I have a nice LG OLED TV. It's probably now, like, I want to say 8 years old. I got it early on, like when the Xbox One X came out. It's definitely time for an upgrade, but I don't really want to upgrade until it's like not working. I don't like spending extra money just for the heck of it, kind of thing. And I've been keeping an eye on prices on TVs, and for the most part, they've stayed within their normal, reasonable amount. I've seen about maybe a $100 to $200 bump in the new year price when the new models come out, but there's also some new features to go along with that. But by 6 months end or at a year's end, that price gets the normal $1,000 cut, like it's been doing for like the past almost 10 years now. So you're basically getting those TVs for half off if you just wait a little bit longer. If you're buying it around Super Bowl time, yeah, they're going to hit you over the head. It's not like it used to be, although you'll still find like the previous year models at a decent discount, but a lot of times those are like only in stores in quantities of ones and twos. So it's like almost like a doorbuster deal for the holidays. But you would think TVs would see similar price increases, but I think probably the biggest difference is the amount of volume. So, and this is no way to give them an excuse to raise the price, because it seems counterintuitive to raise a price if you're having a hard time selling an item. But like TVs, I know sell in the hundreds of thousands, if not hundreds of millions on a regular basis, amongst thousands of different models. I mean, a lot of people have adopted 4K. Not everybody has adopted 8K, but there is a decent number of those that have, and they're upgrading TVs. Like, you can basically get what used to be a $1,500 TV 10 years ago, that they're going for $200 and $300 at Walmart now. So that's something that's kind of funny, that they haven't seen these types of increases. Cell phones, another one. Sure, there has been a bump on some of the flagship models. And if you look at the bigger picture of like the folding phones, or the ones that now have 2 terabytes or a terabyte of storage, Apple's hitting you over the head in a lot of cases for those. And the same thing with Samsung to some extent, but they've always had those phones in the $1,000 plus range as their flagship model. So it's not quite the big jump, except for if you're looking at the new foldable ones, but that's kind of a new tech that you're paying for the factor of having an OLED screen that can fold without having a distinct crease line kind of thing. So it just feels weird to me that they're raising these prices once again. And like you said, if they're already assembled, manufactured, already on our shores, then there shouldn't be any increase on those. Although maybe they're taking into account for the ramp up for the holidays to pay in advance for the ones coming over, and they split the difference between existing inventory, but that doesn't seem like that would be a good way to price structure things. Like I think given this climate of whether it's tariffs, whether it's greed, whether it's inflation in general, I think the big thing that they're going to find out, it's going to pretty much give them this prediction that the industry will slow down because they're pricing themselves out of the market. When you don't have the ability to upgrade your console, let's say, knock on wood, let's hope this doesn't happen to anyone that's listening or anyone else that's a gamer out there. Let's say your console breaks and you got to replace it. It's out of warranty at this point. It's 5 years old. And even if you bought the extended warranty at Best Buy or someplace, they'll come up with some excuse kind of thing. But all in all, if you had to replace your console, you're now getting hit over the head for a lot more money than when you bought it, let's say, at launch. And a lot of people, yeah, great, they bought it at launch, but there's quite a few, or I would say a good substantial amount of the player base that's still on the last gen console. So what are they going to do? Like most of those that are still playing on a PS4 or an Xbox One, typically they wait until about midway of the generation. Oh, the price goes down. I can get a better deal. Maybe I'll get it with a bundle. That doesn't exist now. So those players are going to pretty much be stuck on a PS4 or an Xbox One. Now, I guess the only slight advantage would be that if you have an Xbox One, you can do the game streaming of a series console game on that Xbox One through Game Pass Ultimate. But outside of that, you're now stuck a full generation behind. We're already talking about the next generation in a year or two. So I think these companies have to figure out whether next generation has to go on the cheaper side, kind of pull a Nintendo with lesser hardware. But then we've gotten so used to, ray trace reflections and, specular lighting and all this stuff like that. I don't know if the gaming community would be willing to accept, a cell phone chipset in their home console kind of thing. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think they're making their own premonition of slower sales, even a bigger downside, because if you can't look at like the previous console holders for like PS4s and Xbox Ones to finally upgrade to this gen, which usually they do it maybe a year or two before the next console comes over, or maybe they'll have to now wait and leapfrog and go and pick up the next generation day one, because who knows what the pricing is going to be 5 or 6 years into that next generation kind of thing. But it feels like they're almost trying to kill the gaming industry with these prices to some extent. I know it price sounds silly, but they're pricing themselves out of the market. And there's other alternatives. There's things like NVIDIA, GeForce Now, you got Game Pass, you got PS Plus to kind of get a aggregate of games for a lot less money, but you got to get the hardware first in some cases. Although Game Pass, you can play on a PC that you may already have or a phone or something, but it still feels like it's a bad move with these, companies trying to, I guess, protect their bottom line to some extent and hit us over the head with whatever fees or extra greed percentage points that they want to pay their shareholders. I mean, I am a shareholder, but they've been over 500 for a while now. I don't think they really need to squeeze this much out of a Series S. Like, I think keeping that at like maybe the launch price, like although this is probably unrealistic to some extent, keeping the launch price on these products, I think would probably be the smartest move for them. Raising the price at this point without any, tech bump or any power upgrade, it feels like you're doing a bait and switch kind of. It's like, oh, you see that V8 Camaro over there? Well, we got the 6-cylinder over here. I mean, it looks like the V8, and it's got the wheels, but you get the V6 one instead for the money that you would have paid for the V8 a year ago. It's like, what are we doing? So I don't know. I think they're going to find out over time that maybe hardware isn't the thing that you want to gouge people on. I'm not saying raise the price on services. Maybe you find another alternative, whether it's more lucrative microtransactions or actually listen to the fans on what they want, so they're actually buying the games. But then again, I think the whole thing of when we went from $60 games to $70 games kind of, curtailed some of the buying habits. Because like I said before on this show, when games were 60, I wouldn't even think about it. If it was a game I knew I wanted to play, all right, it's pre-ordered day one. Now it's at 70. It's like, well, I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to get to, these two games if I'm buying this one and this one. So I can wait until those are on sale. And I think that's part of their greed is kind of shot them in the foot by making people either wait for a sale. But if the hardware isn't even going to go on a sale, even at like Christmas time, it's still going to be more than what it was at launch.
Yeah.
You're not going to move this stuff. So I don't know where we're going on this one.